Hello, everyone, and thank you for watching our ROTC panel. We are very fortunate today to have representatives from Morehouse College and from Georgia Tech representing the U.S. Navy and from the Georgia Army National Guard. Thank you for joining us, panelists. We're excited to hear about your programs and what you have to offer students, and we know that they're going to take away a lot of information. And with that, we will get started. At this point, I'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourself, your branch of the military, how long you've been in service, and perhaps you could share a memorable experience that you've had because of the opportunities provided to you as part of your service in the military. And with this, we'll start with Lieutenant Carpenter.
Good morning, everyone. I am Lieutenant Carpenter. I've been in the Navy for about 7.5 years now. I'm a pilot. I fly MH-60 Sierra helicopters. And a memorable moment I guess I've had was probably my first deployment. I was deployed to the country of Bahrain in a land-based detachment with my helicopter squadron. And just getting to experience another culture like that, because we lived in town, we ate out in, Bahraini establishments, we shopped at their grocery store. So that was really my first time experiencing another culture and kind of being, directly involved in that capacity. So that was a very unique experience.
Great, thank you very much. Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. I hope everyone out there is having a great day. My name is Sergeant First Class Richard Hancock. I am in the Georgia Army National Guard as an active duty member. I work primarily with the officer production side of the house. So anyone who is coming into the Georgia Army National Guard as a new second lieutenant, I kind of help facilitate that process and also help facilitate the process of the Minuteman Scholarship for our state. I've been in the Georgia Army National Guard for a little over 15 years. I'm getting close to 15 years actually. And a memorable experience is that I have had the opportunity to go to sniper school early on in my career, and I was a member of a sniper team for roughly 8 years or so of my career. And because of that, I got to go to the country of Georgia to help train some of their snipers, and it was a lot of fun, had a lot of great experiences. And like the Lieutenant Colonel said, got to experience another culture, which was definitely a great experience.
Thank you very much. And Commander Jones.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Commander Bobby Jones. I've been in the Navy for over, counting school, 25 years, commissioned 21 years. I'm a surface warfare officer by trade, but within that, a subsection, what's called a Riverine. I guess the most memorable thing about me, since I'm so old, when I graduated and commissioned, the President of the United States gave me my diploma, and 109 days later, September 11th happened. And I would say that to be able to actively do something about an attack on the country was very, very rewarding. But that led to other things like educational opportunities that I never foresaw coming, and literally traveling around the world. So it's been a pretty good deal for me thus far.
Wow, that's pretty amazing experiences. So this is going to be a kind of a complex question, but I would like y'all to talk about some of the advantages of being in an ROTC program during college. What is the service requirement after college? And maybe you could give us an idea of how students fulfill their military and their ROTC requirements within the confines of a college schedule. So with that, we'll start with Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, ma'am. There's lots of advantages of participating in ROTC while you're going through college. Some of those are monetary-based advantages, extra money in your pocket and extra money to pay for school while you're going through college. But I would say one of the biggest advantages that comes out of participating in ROTC is the leadership skills that you develop when you go on to move on to the next phase of your life, whether that's a civilian career or participating further in the military, active duty, or on the reserve side. The service requirements that come after college are going to be different for different individuals. It will depend on whether or not you're going to ROTC, whether or not you're going to active duty, or whether or not you're going to a reserve component. Also, the type of scholarship that you have, if you have one, can determine your length of service. Generally speaking, though, I would say everyone has an 8-year mandatory service obligation, and that can be broken up between active service time and inactive reserve time. So they can participate in a 4x4 where they do 4 active duty and then 4 in the reserves or the IRR, or they can participate for 6 years in the reserves and then 2 years in the IRR. And this will depend on, like I said, their scholarship and which component branch of service they commission into.
That's great. Thank you very much. Let's go to Commander Jones now.
Quite simply, I think the advantages of doing ROTC are multifaceted. So first of all, there is the financial gain, obviously, of having your tuition and up to tuition, room, and board paid for college. When you look at the average cost of college nowadays, both in-state and out-of-state, it's quite significant. You have people that graduated around the same time I did that are still paying student loans. So that's the obvious thing. But what ROTC offers is an opportunity to develop yourself into a leader. And that's something not everybody can do. A wide variety of fields, whether it's Navy ROTC and you're talking about aviation, like, you know, the movie Top Gun Maverick, or you're talking about subs, you're talking about Navy SEALs, you can do a variety of things, right? But at the core competency level, what we're developing you to be is a leader. And part of that starts in college doing ROTC, because there will be additional requirements on your time. It will force you at a very young age to prioritize and utilize time management. Upon completion of your service, completion of the program in college, you're obligated to serve 5 years as a commissioned officer, and then you will transition to the inactive reserve. What I can tell you is those 5 years will go by very fast. Part of the 5 years that you have to deal with is training for your primary occupation in the military. So if you are like me, a surface warfare officer, you're going to spend at least 6 months to almost a year getting ready to do the job. And the next thing you know, you're moved overseas, you come back home, and before you're 25, 26 years old, it's over if that's what you want. But it's not just a potential job. It's not even necessarily a career. It's more of a lifestyle that you adopt the second you start ROTC at your respective university.
Thank you very much. And Lieutenant Carpenter.
I think Commander Jones really hit the nail on the head there in terms of ROTC's role in developing the future leaders of the Navy, Marine Corps, and Army and Air Force, of course. The only thing I guess I would caveat that with is the service commitment is a base of 5 years, but certain jobs will have an additional commitment on top of that. For example, a pilot like me, you have to do 8 years after you complete flight school, which generally takes about 2 years. So the commitment can vary depending on the job that you are assigned for the Navy.
All right, great information. Thank you all. So when should students begin talking with a military recruiter, and how do students apply for an ROTC program? Commander Jones, would you start this off, please?
Sure. So a couple of things. Applying for ROTC is different than applying to enlist. So at the completion of ROTC, you're commissioned an officer, as opposed to enlisting with one of your local recruiters and going straight to boot camp. Now, the local recruiters can do both. They will help you if you want to become an officer. They'll help you if you want to become enlisted. The major thing that I would tell kids to do is, if you want to start talking to them, talk to them early in your high school career. The earlier, the better. It's not too early to talk to them as a freshman if you're talking about doing ROTC. Why do I say that? Because there are certain academic requirements that you must do in order to be eligible to do an ROTC program, whether it's Army, Navy, Air Force. So when you talk to that military recruiter, they will lay out for you, okay, look, this is what typically someone who gets accepted in the program has done academically. If you wait until your junior or even your senior year, it's often too late to change your transcript to be a competitive, viable candidate. So that's what I would offer. And then secondly, when you do apply, you still would go through those military recruiters, but you're doing 2 applications at the same time. You're applying to ROTC, and you're additionally also applying to one of the schools that has an ROTC unit. Those 2 separate processes happen in conjunction during your senior year. So if you just apply for the ROTC program, but don't apply to a college, you won't be accepted because there's no college for you to attend. If you apply just to college and not the ROTC program, you'll get accepted to college, but you'll have to wait until you can apply as a college programmer or a 3-year scholarship person because you missed the deadlines for ROTC. So again, to recap, talk early, talk often, starting as soon as you get into high school, and then you apply both to the ROTC program your senior year of high school and the colleges that host those units at the same time.
Great advice. Thank you. Lieutenant Carpenter, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, of course. I'm actually going to put a link in the chat. I don't know if you can display it on your screen or perhaps include it in some text with the panel. But this is the Navy website that students can go to in order to start their application. So like Commander Jones mentioned, it's 2 separate applications. There's the schools that you're applying to, which goes entirely through the school, like Morehouse or to Georgia Tech, for example. And then there's also the scholarship application, which is national to, to any ROTC, Navy ROTC school. So the 2 separate processes. The link that I provided in the chat there is specifically for the Navy 4-year scholarship for ROTC students. So as part of that application, you will work with a local recruiter and they'll help you organize, like you mentioned, your transcript, your ACT and SAT scores. There's an essay component and there's also an officer interview. And that's kind of our only interface in the ROTC program with the application process. We don't really review applications ourselves. That's all done by, larger Navy, but we do conduct those officer interview portions of the application package.
All right, thank you very much. I don't think that link is showing up, but we will make sure that we get it and we will add it to the intro, or we'll attach it to this file so that students can view that. Thank you very much. And Sergeant Hancock, would you like to add anything?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to say that specifically for some of the reserve components, you can enlist early in your high school career, as early as 17 years old and a junior in high school. So there is a jump start that you can get essentially on your military career if you know that you want to be an enlisted service member while you're going through ROTC. So as early as 17 and a junior in high school with parents' permission, and start earning, a paycheck and start earning some work experience as well. I would say start talking to a military recruiter before you enter your junior year, because there's never a bad time to get information. There's never a bad time to seek out the different recruiters from the different components and figure out which was going to be the best fit for you and your future goals in life. Applying for ROTC, however, is going to depend on a lot of factors. It's going to depend on which program you want to enter, what types of scholarships you want to apply for, because some you need to apply to ROTC before you can complete the scholarship application, like at the University of North Georgia. And I would say, like the commander said, start early. Not only talking to the military recruiter, but talking to the recruiting operations officer for the ROTC program at the college that you wish to attend. And if you're not sure about, does your college have an ROTC program, you can obviously go on to the Army's website and search for ROTC programs within the state. Georgia has roughly 25 schools that you can attend and participate in the ROTC. So there's a lot of good information on that website where you can figure out, is this going to be viable for you?
All right, well, that makes a great segue to the next question, which is, does every college have an ROTC unit on campus? And what happens if a student wants to go to a college where there is no unit on that campus? So let's start this round with Lieutenant Carpenter, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So that link that I gave you that will be included with the panel description has a list of schools on there. And if we just go, it's categorized by state. So if we click on F here, I can say Florida A&M University is a host school and also accepts students from Florida State and Tallahassee Community College. So the important thing here is the host school. When you're looking at schools to apply to, the host school is going to be where your unit is located and where you're going to have to go for your naval science classes and some special meetings. But you can be a student at a school, at one of those crosstown schools that are affiliated. For Georgia Tech, for example, is affiliated with Kennesaw State and Georgia State. So we not only have Georgia Tech students in our program, we also have students from KSU and GSU. So that website will list every host school and then their crosstown affiliate schools as well.
All right, thank you very much. And let's go to Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, ma'am. The number of host institutions throughout the state is smaller in comparison to the total number of schools that you can participate in ROTC. And using Georgia Tech as a reference, Georgia Tech for the Army side of the house has 3 other colleges that you can attend and participate in the ROTC program with Georgia Tech. And those are Kennesaw State, Emory, and Agnes Scott. Now, Kennesaw State is an extension unit, meaning there's enough individuals there that are in the cadet program to have active duty service members as faculty and cadre members at that location. So you have enough students at Georgia Tech and KSU to have 2 separate units, but all affiliated to the same program. But at Emory and Agnes Scott, they don't have that same arrangement. So those are the crosstown partnerships for the Georgia Tech ROTC program. And it's like that with a lot of the other schools throughout the state.
Thank you. Commander Jones.
Yes, so to repeat what Lieutenant Carpenter said, there are affiliate schools with the host school. Now, to show the variety of schools, the Navy has 66 units, specific units across the country. And on those units, you have various colleges that are attached. So Georgia Tech, using the example she said, is the home unit. And then you have multiple schools attached to it. Why do I say that? It gives you a variety of choice when going through the application process for college. You may be someone that has a strong tradition of your family. Like, for example, I'm over here at Morehouse College. It's a historically Black college university. You may want to go to an HBCU. Well, there are 5 units that are attached to HBCUs across the country. You may want to go specifically to a college that your parents, grandparents continuously went to. There are units there. So I would tell every kid 2 things. Where do you want to go to college first is a question you should ask. And what do you want to study would be the second. Then take a look at the map of available universities and see what matches. Don't start the process just looking at universities. Have a plan on how you want to break these things down, because between the Army, which has over 200 schools, if I'm not mistaken, and the Navy, which has, like I said, 66 units, but I think something like 80 something schools, you need to narrow down your choices, because you can't do, 15, 16 applications. So to save yourself further headache and time, have a plan on how you go about narrowing down your choices.
All right, that's all great advice. Thank you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about scholarships. What type of scholarships do you offer through the ROTC program, and how do students find out about those scholarships? What's the application process? We'll start with Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, ma'am. So there are a lot of different scholarships that someone could potentially apply for, and those will depend on a few different factors, like what type of school, which school they're going to go to, and what type of obligation they want after they commission. So in Georgia, we have a senior military college, University of North Georgia. It has a full 4-year scholarship. It can also be a 3 or 2-year scholarship, but it pays for every expense of going to the University of North Georgia. It is a state-based scholarship that comes with a service obligation to the state of Georgia once you complete your degree and commission. Then we also have a junior military college, Georgia Military College, and there is a 2-year scholarship at that school for earning your associate's degree and then moving on to finish your bachelor's degree at another university. That scholarship also pays for every expense with going to college at Georgia Military College. Of those 2 scholarships, the one at the University of North Georgia has a commissioning requirement, but the state service scholarship at Georgia Military College does not have a commissioning requirement, meaning you can use the scholarship, complete your associate's degree, and move on to a follow-on institution without having to commission as an officer in the Georgia Army National Guard. There is also the Minuteman Scholarship. That is a national scholarship, but every state has a certain number of those scholarships available to them. The reserve component, Army Reserves, also has a number of those scholarships as well. And the individuals that sign off on those scholarships like to speak to upcoming students, upcoming cadets, to find out whether they meet the requirements to fill the scholarship, but also if this is an individual that looks like they're going to be a good leader in the future, so that they can sign off on their nomination for the Minuteman Scholarship. There is also the national scholarship for active duty Army. And then there is the campus-based scholarships, the GRFE scholarships that someone can receive even after they started with the ROTC program. Now, the two state-based scholarships, or the three scholarships that we have for Georgia that come from the Georgia National Guard, either the Georgia Military Scholarship at the University of North Georgia, the State Service Scholarship at Georgia Military College, or the Minuteman Scholarship, which can be used at any of the colleges throughout Georgia that have ROTC programs. All of those come with a requirement to enlist in the Georgia Army National Guard while you are going through college. And if you're not in Georgia, if you're going to a school in Florida and using the Minuteman, obviously you would commission into the Florida National Guard, but all of those scholarships come with that enlistment requirement while you're going through ROTC. But on top of that, you're going to get some extra benefits aside from what you would normally just get from ROTC while you're participating and while you're going through the service. We have a lot of good programs set up to help those individuals out, kind of figure out what's the best path for them. But for the two main scholarships that I mentioned, the Georgia Military College and the University of North Georgia scholarships, you can visit gafutures.org to find the applications for those and the timelines for those. The Minuteman Scholarship, I run that for Georgia. So if anyone's interested, they can reach out to me, email, phone call, and I can get them set up with the application and we can go from there.
All right, wow, lots of good information. All right, Commander Jones.
Yes, so as far as the actual scholarships and what they cover, overall, it varies school to school, but the things that are definitely 100% covered by the United States Navy is the actual tuition of the school. Now, most schools have an agreement with the Navy where they will provide room and or board, and a significant number provides room, board, and scholarship all at the same time. Georgia Tech, I believe, is one of those schools, as opposed to Morehouse, which provides room, which is significantly expensive. And the Navy provides tuition, which means all you basically pay for is your meals. So it depends on the individual unit. That is something that I would tell people to ask about when they're applying to those schools. And it probably is a significant factor in deciding which schools you apply to. But that being said, the major chunk of your college tuition is paid for. I mean, the actual major chunk of your college costs is paid for by Navy, and that's tuition. But most schools cover more than just tuition. It's an agreement between the Navy and the individual school that's participating in the unit. But you have to contact the unit and the school to find out the particulars for each school.
All right, great information. And Lieutenant Carpenter.
Sure. So what Commander Jones was speaking to there is actually not provided by Georgia Tech. It's provided by the state of Georgia. So I would encourage high school students to look into that as well. So for Georgia students specifically, there are the Hope and Zell Miller scholarships, I believe they're called. So while the Navy scholarship provides money to fund tuition or room and board, the Hope and Zell Miller scholarship provides academically strong high school students with tuition money. So what a lot of our students will do in order to have more of their costs covered is they'll have the Hope or Zell Miller scholarship cover their tuition, and they'll use their Navy scholarship to cover a portion of their room and board expenses. So they have that opportunity available. And I just wanted to touch on some other scholarship opportunities as well. So we've spoken about the National 4-Year Scholarship, which high school students will apply for, but there's also, if you don't get the 4-year scholarship, there are other ways to join ROTC. So starting as a freshman, if you attend one of those schools that's either a host unit or a crosstown school, you can join the ROTC battalion through what's called the college program. So that doesn't come with any financial compensations, as a freshman, but it does give you the opportunity to apply for a 3-year or 2-year scholarship. And then ultimately, if you aren't selected for a scholarship at all throughout your collegiate career, you do start receiving money as a junior as a college program midshipman. It's just a small spending stipend that you'll get per month. But that does put you on a commissioning track to join, to commission as a naval officer after graduation. So that's another way to get involved with the program. That's not necessarily a scholarship, but it is a way to reach your goal if joining the Navy as an officer is your goal.
There's one additional thing I'd like to add real quick,
Yes,
ma'am, if I may. As far as scholarships, as Lieutenant Carpenter mentioned, the National Scholarship, but we also have in the Navy what's called Minority Serving Institution Scholarships. So if you do apply for this scholarship. And you apply at the same time as your national scholarship, and you choose to try to enroll in a historically Black college or a high Hispanic enrollment institution. Most of those are out west, like Arizona. There is additional scholarships that are made available too. And it's just like getting a national scholarship. The only restriction is you have to attend one of those type of institutions. And so Morehouse College, Spelman College, Clark Atlanta University, they fall into that category. Savannah State additionally falls into that category. Florida A&M falls into that category, which a lot of kids from Georgia and Florida all apply to these schools. So that's just another thing to keep in mind.
That's great information. And actually, that takes me right into the next question, which is a little bit more about the specifics about the process to apply for a scholarship and the timeline. And Commander Jones, I'm going to start with you, but you mentioned earlier that there are certain requirements, like you talked about students starting early to have the right academic pathways for ROT scholarships. In your answer, could you include some of that information as well, please?
Sure. So the safest thing I would say to anyone who's interested in this is you need to take 4 years of math in high school, 4 years of science, 4 years of English. Why do I say that? Remember, your high school requirements in your local school district or your private school to graduate may or may not be different than the admissions requirements of the colleges that you apply to. So there are certain districts around the country where you only have to take 3 years of math. You only have to take 2 years of English, this, that, and the other. And that's fine to graduate. However, to be competitive both for the scholarship and most universities nowadays, you need to have 4 years of math and science in particular. Why do I say that? Well, it's twofold. Number one, the schools that the Navy has that are host units for ROTC, all of them have technical tracks in them, and most of them are engineering-based schools, which is why we don't have as many as the Army. So Georgia Tech, MIT, schools like that, RPI, they are engineering schools. And so what guidance counselors and admissions counselors from those universities are doing, they're trying to project how you're going to do as a freshman, taking calculus and chemistry. Calculus historically across the country is one of the, if not the #1 class incoming freshmen have difficulty with in college. And so they would like to see you be prepared thoroughly by taking 4 years of math. If you take 1 year off, and then jump directly into college level math and science courses, it's usually difficult for the individual. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second reason that, taking those 4 years, specifically math, science classes is important is in the Navy, we deal with very, very high tech equipment, very elite electronics, from nuclear reactors on submarines and aircraft carriers to mobile radar systems out in the ocean. And you have to understand certain things about physics. You have to understand certain things about chemistry that you will use every day, which is why they make those a requirement for those who are trying to become officers in the Navy. That being said, overall, I would give any kid who's just talking about trying to go to college, when you apply, if you are a current junior going into your senior year, the NROTC scholarship portal usually opens in April of your junior year, where you can start. And you can work your application even over the summer. And you'll find most of your universities are about the same time with their timelines for admissions. Because once they get done with one class, that incoming freshman class, they immediately start enroll with the next class. Those that work their applications over the summer really are an advantage, because think about it like this. If you're trying to go into a university and they have 800 students that they say they're bringing in as freshmen, well, if you're there if you completed all of your application right when the school starts opening its admissions process, you have your best opportunity because there are the most seats available. As the year goes on, and they start sending out offers, because all of these colleges now have what's called rolling admissions. They don't send out all of their acceptance letters at the same time. As they finish an application, they send out an acceptance letter. the number of seats available shrink. So if you wait until January to complete of your senior year to complete your admissions application, you're dealing with probably the smallest amount of seats available, because most colleges' deadline for their applications are January 31st. So I would advise you, as soon as it opens, start working on your application, because you have to get recommendations from certain teachers. And while they're still in school in the spring semester, you can work that, and then you can work on your personal essays and all the other requirements that colleges have over the summer. So when those admissions boards start to meet in early August, you're first in the docket and you give yourself the most opportunity. Additionally, ROTC boards, they will start meeting around the same time. Now, it depends on the fiscal year, meaning depends on the actual year and how many spots they want to have for those to come into the ROTC program, but they will set their schedule and it'll be posted the same place that you apply for your application. So you'd have to check to see what days they meet or when they meet, but typically they meet at minimum once a month, and they start their rolling process as well. Sorry, that's a long answer, but that timeline matters.
But that's all great information, so thank you. Lieutenant Carpenter, anything
I
to
think
share?
the only thing that Commander Jones didn't touch on is the deadline for the four-year national scholarship is also the end of January. So like he said, start working the earlier the better. You get more looks if you have your application completed sooner, and all the other information about the application is available on that website. And you'll actually work with a local recruiter to help you through the process as well.
All right, great. Let's go to Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, ma'am. There is a few different timelines, and for individuals that want to take one of the scholarships that we offer from the Georgia National Guard, whether that's the Georgia Military Scholarship, the State Service Scholarship, or the Minuteman Scholarship. With the Georgia Military Scholarship, typically the end of January is going to be their deadline, their cutoff for that. So like the commander said in a lot of his responses, start early, absolutely start early. When you're looking at which college you want to apply to, most of them will have a link to the ROTC program that's affiliated with the college on their website as well. So make sure you're looking at that and looking at the scholarships that they offer at that university and those timelines and deadlines and the process to apply, so that you can get a quick and early jump start on the application process. And if you haven't started applying to ROTC or to these scholarships by the time you're applying to the college, do it at the same time. You can, a lot of times you can fill all these applications out for all three from the school's website, or find links to the ROTC program or to the scholarship so that you can get that done at the same time. That's obviously the latest. Like I mentioned earlier, with the scholarships that we offer in the state of Georgia, there is that enlistment requirement, but we don't expect someone to enlist before they've accepted the scholarship, before they've been nominated, received the scholarship, and accepted it. So you can apply for the scholarship before you're an enlisted service member. I just wanted to point that out. And for the State Service Scholarship at Georgia Military College, they are on a quarter schedule instead of a semester schedule. So that timeline for the scholarship is kind of a rolling timeline. And you can speak to Master Sergeant retired Thomas down there at Georgia Military College, who handles the scholarship. And he can walk you through that process of not only applying, but what those deadlines are, what those requirements are that you have to meet, because the requirements are a little bit different for each scholarship. Now, with the Minuteman Scholarship, we get our allotments for that scholarship typically late March of every year. So you don't have to wait till March to apply necessarily, but we don't know if the requirements have changed, because sometimes they do change from year to year, whether that's, is this going to pay for tuition or room and board at private schools or not, like it has in some years in the past, and some years it hasn't. Is this going to be strictly a 4-year scholarship? Is it going to be open to 3- and 2-year applicants as well? But you can apply for that process early, and I can go ahead and have you listed on our order of merit list so that we know that you're still interested in this scholarship and that you would like some more information when the time comes, so that we can get that nomination out there.
All right, that's great advice. Thank you all. The next question, Lieutenant Carpenter actually mentioned this a little bit in her answer, talking about recruiters. So we'll start with you, Lieutenant Carpenter, but how do recruiters actually facilitate a recruit's entry into the armed services? What are some of the things that they do to help students become active? And we will start with you.
Absolutely. So the recruiters are very familiar with the application requirements, timeline, the whole process. So they really help those high school students who are applying for a four-year national scholarship to compile their package all together. They provide the opportunity to take the physical fitness test, or will help you set that up with your school. There's a physical fitness test component. They'll organize your transcripts and test scores. They will help you find an officer to conduct your officer interview, which for Georgia Tech is usually me. So they kind of help coordinate the entire process for the students. They compile the package, and then I think ultimately the student is the one who submits it, but they have that recruiter along every step of the way to ask any questions or to basically provide assistance throughout that process.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And let's go to Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, ma'am. We have a lot of great recruiters here in Georgia that will help any applicant through the process of not only applying to college, applying to ROTC, or applying to one of these scholarships. What I do in that process is, if an individual hasn't spoken to a local recruiter yet, because I'm not a recruiter and I don't put people in the military anymore necessarily. If they haven't spoken to a recruiter yet, I help facilitate that meeting. If they haven't spoken to the ROTC yet, I will help facilitate that meeting as well. But I'm also there to help the recruiter, whether they're a new or a seasoned recruiter, if they haven't walked through these processes themselves, if they need their questions answered so that they can help their applicant better. I'm there to help answer any of their questions to facilitate that process. In the National Guard, we do have an enlistment program called the 09 Romeo program that will allow an individual to come straight out of high school, enlist into the Georgia Army National Guard, and not necessarily go to basic training and advanced individual training. They can graduate high school, start their military service, and also start their college career without having to leave or take semesters off. If an individual does want to go to basic training or does want to attend an individual job training, they can do that as well. But for those individuals that know they want to get out of high school, go straight into college, but they also want to serve and get some of those benefits, apply for some of those scholarships, there is a program specifically for those individuals as well. It's called the 09 Romeo program, and you can enlist into that program whether you're coming to the National Guard or the Army Reserves. I'm not particularly familiar with the other components and if they have the same type of program, but it is an excellent program for individuals who want to, like I said, go ahead and get into college, serve in the military, but don't want to take any time off.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And Commander Jones.
The word I would give to anybody applying, the recruiters are there to help facilitate your application. They're the ones that submit it, et cetera. Yes, but the individual student or candidate is responsible for making sure things are submitted on time. What does that mean? That means you need to be the one that's checking the deadlines and checking and verifying with your recruiter that information has been submitted. You may think something's been submitted online, or you may think a recommendation has been submitted, but that recruiter is the one that has to put it in. But there again, they're not responsible to make sure your information is accurate and up to date. You are. And to be honest with you, it's a very good practice for what you will have to do as an officer in the United States military. Trust but verify. And that goes, again, not just for the ROTC scholarship, which the recruiter helps you with, but the college application, which they do not help you with. They tell you, hey, you need to apply to a college, but the college application is separated from the recruiter. He or she will not help you with that. So that's you driving that with your guidance counselor at your local high school to make sure things are submitted. So it's a twofold process. But the recruiters are pretty good usually on following up. And many times they're the ones poking the candidates to finish their application because they understand what we mentioned earlier, the timeline and how things get compressed as you get closer to January.
Thank you very much. So students who are interested in a military career are generally advised to take the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery Test somewhere in high school, usually around junior year. do ROTC students need to take the ASVAB exam as well prior to going to college? Sergeant Hancock.
That would depend on if they want to go ahead and enlist and while they're going through college or while they're coming out of high school. If they are going to enlist into the military in any of the components, then yes, they do need to take the ASVAB. But even if they're not going to enlist, it is a good idea to take that test because it is a test not specifically telling you, hey, you would be good in the military. It's a test telling you what in life you would be good at, what types of jobs that you could possibly excel in. And that can translate to what types of jobs you do in the military, what type of officer branch you can mission into, or what type of enlisted job you serve in. That test can help open your options up for you and tell you exactly what types of jobs are not only in your, you might be weakest in, but what jobs you're going to be strongest in. And like I said, it's a good idea to take it. And most high schools in Georgia, I would say, have that test available to the juniors. And if your school in particular doesn't put that test on for the juniors and seniors at your school, your local recruiter with any of the components can help you take that ASVAB.
All right, great advice. Commander Jones, anything to add?
Yes, so because this is a college application, in part, ASVAB scores are not exactly necessary for ROTC, not in the Navy at least, but standardized test scores such as SAT and ACT are a requirement, both for the colleges that you apply to typically. Some don't use it as a determining factor, but they will ask for it. Some still do. That's part of the COVID fallout. They're still working through that in universities individually. But I can tell you for the scholarship board for ROTC for the Navy, it is a requirement, either the SAT or the ACT. I tell students to take those as early as possible too, even starting in the 9th grade. Why? Because a lot of those standardized tests is about comfort level, right? And you don't want all of your hopes and dreams for a scholarship to ride on one test. What if you're sick that day? So you take it early, you take it often, and I tell people also to take each test at least once. We have found, statistically speaking, that kids that struggle with the SAT tend to do better with the ACT and vice versa because the tests are structured differently. So I tell kids to take the SAT and the ACT and go from there. But to take it multiple times is only increasing your chance for getting selected for scholarship and admission.
Great advice. All right, Lieutenant Carpenter, would you like to add to that?
I think they both covered it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So what types of things can students do in high school to prepare for ROTC and military service graduation, both academically and involvement in activities or even physical fitness preparation? Let's start with Commander Jones.
It's a very good question. Typically, a lot of kids, they will do a junior ROTC unit if it's available in their high school. And that definitely helps because it starts getting kids not only in the mindset, but they start to see the beginnings of that military culture at a young age. However, a lot of high schools do not have JROTC. Mine did not. But there are things that you can do to still prepare yourself. So I tell kids, hey, it's kind of like a triangle of things you want to do. You want to be academically as strong as possible. B, also do something athletic, whether it's sports, varsity, club sports, something like that, because there's a significant physical component to being in the military. And then C, extracurricular activities, things outside of school that provide some sort of roundness to your development. That could be at your local places of worship, that could be at various community centers and community programs, but you want to try to pull from each one of these three major groups. Why? Again, projecting yourself forward in the future, when you are a commissioned officer, you're going to be expected to do things just like that. You're going to be expected to be physically fit. You're going to be expected to be able to think and make critical decisions. And then also, you're going to have to know how to take care of your people. You'll be overall responsible for them. And they come from a wide variety of backgrounds and upbringings. doing extracurricular activities can help take you out of your own bubble and comfort zone and help prepare you to lead individuals later.
All right, that's great advice. Let's go to Lieutenant Carpenter.
Sure. So aside from the scholarship application process where you want to present yourself as the most, suitable candidate and well-rounded person, just general advice that I give our applicants when I do my interview is building those good habit patterns now while you're in high school. So aside from ROTC, when high school students get to college, something that most people struggle with, again, not just ROTC, most college students struggle with, is you go from a top tier performer in your high school to being surrounded by other top tier performers in your college. So a lot of people who haven't necessarily had to study, they've always had good grades because the classes have been easy for them, will show up to college and then don't know how to succeed because they've never had to work for it before. So my advice is to build good study habits now, to improve your propensity for good academics in college, and then physical fitness as well. When you show up as a freshman in college, your mom's not going to be there to ask if you've done your homework tonight, and your soccer coach isn't going to be there to make sure you're working out every day. So building those good habits at an individual level will really pay dividends when you get to college and you don't have that forceful backup.
All right, more great advice. Thank you. And Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that you can do that will help you prepare for ROTC and kind of that military life and setting is that you can join the National Guard early. You can join the National Guard early as 17 and junior in high school. And when you're coming to drill 1 weekend a month, you're going to get a feel for what's expected of you as an individual. And you're going to start learning a lot of those military traditions, common courtesies, things like that, that can help you succeed when you're in ROTC. So you kind of know what's going on before you get there. On top of that, I would say time management is a great skill to learn and develop if you haven't done so already, because when you're in college, obviously you have all of your classes that you have to participate in, but you also have ROTC as well. And those two things, if on together, can be a lot for some students who haven't practiced and dealt with managing their own time before. And especially if those individuals want to participate in other clubs or organizations in their college campus, being able to manage your time effectively is a very good skill to have and something you should prepare for as early as you can to get ready for college and ROTC.
Time management is critical. Thank you so much. That was all great information. So let's talk about what you're looking for in students. Beyond GPA and test scores, what type of student thrives in an ROTC program? Let's start with Lieutenant Carpenter.
Yeah, so again, we don't deal with the scholarship application process directly, so I can't speak to what scholarship boards are looking for other than what's listed on the website and being a well-rounded candidate. But in terms of who thrives in ROTC, it's somebody who has been involved. So like Commander Jones spoke to earlier, it's really important to be involved, not only doing well academically and being involved with sports or at least with some form of physical activity, but also to be involved in your community, whether that's through a faith-based program like he was talking about, or clubs, other activities, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, just being involved and showing that you care about the environment around you. Basically, we look for people who want to build something better for those around them and who, will like to do that for the Navy as well. So we're looking for people who want to achieve and who want to make those around them better and kind of build the best environment they can be in.
All right, great. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, ma'am. The typical model that we look at is leader, scholar, athlete. So what have you done throughout your high school career that can speak to your leadership abilities? What have you done that can speak to your scholastic abilities, whether that's your GPA and your test scores, but also what types of extra academic things have you taken on upon yourself to kind of set yourself apart? And the athlete portion as well, have you participated in any school sports or sports in your local community? Those types of things are what we typically look for, and what I have individuals write out specifically for the Minuteman Scholarship when they send their applications back to me, because like we said before, we want well-rounded individuals and individuals that have taken the time to develop themselves. If someone hasn't participated in any clubs or in any sports, having a job simply can speak to your leadership abilities. What types of things have you done in the job that you had going to high school? Because it's hard to have a job while you attend high school for a lot of individuals, and those types of things, they speak a lot about a person and an individual, and how have you participated in your community. So there's lots of things we look at. It's never just one specific thing that's going to set someone apart. It's a well-rounded individual that can speak to all of those qualities.
All right, great advice. Thank you. And Commander Jones.
I think Sergeant hit it on the head. Anything that requires your time, that influences other people, is something that we're looking for. Everybody wants to be a leader until it's time to actually do some real leading. And so it's not something that you can sit there and say, if you do this, do that, do this, you can possibly be a good leader. Some of those leadership forms literally will take the place of, I know for a fact that there have been kids that have basically been a de facto parent to some of their siblings because of their domestic situation. That matters. There have been kids, like Sergeant said, that had a job, but they didn't just have a job because they wanted extra money. They had a job because they needed to provide and help the family. There have been kids in more of the rural parts of America that I've seen that have an unbelievable military-like schedule where they get up early, 4 o'clock, 4:30, and do chores before they go to school. Then they come home after doing whatever sport and do their homework and do that. Those things matter. Why? Because it's extra, not just extra time, but extra responsibility. And so we look for kids that are not afraid to take on the responsibility and be held accountable for those things. Again, a lot of kids want to say that they're a leader, but then when you look and see what they actually do, are they really leading you or are they managing you? We're looking for kids that can motivate other people to do things they normally could not do by themselves. And that's hard to quantify in an individual, especially someone as young as 17, 18. But what we try to do is get that kid that has the potential and then project and develop them and project them so we can see what they look like when they're in their mid-20s, leading people in situations of consequence.
Wow, that was really great information. I think that will be really helpful for students to understand some of the things that they can do while they're in high school. It's awesome. Thank you. Well, we're going to wrap up. And this is our last question. So I would ask you to share anything else you would like to tell us about your ROTC programs. And if you could each maybe give us one piece of advice about the ROTC and college admissions process, maybe something you haven't mentioned yet. We'll start with Sergeant Hancock.
Yes, ma'am. I would just say to anyone that is getting ready to go into that college application process, that ROTC application and scholarship application process, just to seek out information, whether that's coming from the guidance counselor, whether that's coming from the college, a website, local recruiters for any of the service components. Seek out information from all sources that you can so that you can make the best possible decision of what college you want to attend to, what service component you want to commission with, what type of scholarship you want to take, and service, obviously the service obligations that come with those, so that you're better prepared to get a jump start and complete that process as early as possible. Because a lot of times we have individuals that want to start this process very late, and they may not have time to complete the process, or applicants who may not necessarily be better than them on paper are getting those benefits and getting those opportunities because they started the process early. So I would say seek out information, start the process early.
All right, great advice. Commander Jones.
I would just tell the average candidate, whether they're talking about ROTC or just enlisting, that, a lot of people will tell you, congratulations that you got to that point, that you were able to get accepted into such a prestigious program. I would tell them to change your mindset when it comes to that. Getting an ROTC, enlisting in the United States military is literally the starting point. So don't rest on your laurels, because guess what? The real work begins. There is a reason that we have a nationwide search for candidates to do this, there is a reason that once we find them, the federal government is willing to provide a significant amount of money towards your education. There is a reason that once you get out, no matter how long you stay in, that you will keep the title that you have the rest of your life. It's because it's the most difficult profession any American citizen can really do, because it requires selflessness. And that's the big secret that no one tells you. We're looking to develop leaders, but true leadership is being a servant. It's selfless. So how do you take someone who has been brilliant in the first portion of their life, great grades, great SAT, ACT scores, a leader in their local community, and have them join an organization that's much bigger than themselves and tell that kid, hey, it's no longer about you. It's about the people that you lead. It's about the people that you serve. It's about the country that you protect. So keep that in mind. This is not just a regular scholarship program. The demands are greater, but the stakes are higher. And if we don't have a significant portion of our best and brightest do this, we as a nation become weaker. That's all I'd like to add.
Wow, that's great. Great information and great advice. Lieutenant Carpenter.
What a tough thing to follow up on, man. Just to speak a little between those two portions, right? The gathering the information and the commissioning into a leader of our sailors and Marines. The piece in between is just finding the path that aligns the most with your values. There are a lot of different ways to commission into any military service. So you can get a college degree on your own and go through OCS afterwards. You can go to the Naval Academy like Commander Jones. You can go through ROTC like I did. And then if you choose the ROTC route, the expectations and experience are going to be a lot different than a normal college student. And they're also going to be different than you would have at the Naval Academy. So as you're gathering all that information, you have to find the path that's going to align the most with what you want for your future. And the same goes when you're selecting schools as well. Look to find the schools and the ROTC units and the programs that are going to best align with how you want to develop yourself into a leader in the future.
Wow, that was great too. Thank you. Thank you all panelists for such great information. You shared so much. I think the students are going to walk away with a different sense of what ROTC programs involve and the successes that they can have. So thank you for sharing that. More importantly, thank you to each of you for your service. It is truly appreciated. And as Commander Jones says, it is a sacrifice and a selfless act, and we appreciate what you do. So thank you very much. To our viewers, we will post the links that were referenced in this panel discussion. It will be at the beginning. So if you go back to the very beginning, we'll have a list of all the links that were mentioned. Don't forget to watch the other college panels and go to the virtual booths in base camp. We encourage you to take advantage of the workshops and the information found there. Thank you so much on behalf of the Scholar Truck team for joining us today. And with that, we will sign off. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.